How do people who live across the country from one another maintain a romantic relationship? This question really sparked our interest. We want to try to understand how people can be happy in a relationship when they rarely get to see their significant other. This was our beginning thoughts when we were set to embark on our research project. Eventually, our hypothesis came to, the more you communicate in a long-distance relationship, the higher level of relational satisfaction you will have. We hypothesized that the more a couple communicates digitally, the happier they will be with their relationship. A study done by Dayton and colleagues indicated that telephone use was positively associated with relational satisfaction and commitment, which are the most common indicators of relational success. Also, internet use was strongly associated with trust, a key factor in any relationship, but particularly important in distance relationship. Another study that verified our hypothesis was done by O'Sullivan and colleagues. Evidence shows that computer-mediated communication has the potential to be used in many ways that are important for relationship initiation, development, and maintenance. We really are interested to see how our peers are able to maintain these distance relationships. We conducted our survey to ask simple but informing questions that will show us how the participants maintain their distance relationships.
For the methods part of our study, we look at participants. And we received our participants in our survey by having each group member post a link to the Qualtrics survey on Facebook using snowball sampling. The method that was used was bivariate correlation. Bivariate correlation can be used when you want to determine if two variables are linearly related to each other. After reviewing the results, we found that we had 88 participants, but only 78 of those participants had valid results. The 10 that weren't valid were because when answering the first question, are you currently in a long-distance relationship, they responded no, making their subsequent answers illogical. Our only demographic of our survey was that you must be in a long-distance relationship, but things such as age, location, and sex did not matter. For the procedure part of our study, based on how we conducted our study, it was definitely a survey. In order to get results from participants, our procedure was one in which participants were recruited via links on social media websites with the specification of being in a long-distance relationship. Participants were asked on a Qualtrics survey using a bipolar scale, text, and multiple choice options to reflect how frequently they use digital forms of communication to interact with their partner. Participants were then asked to measure their own satisfaction with the relationship based on the use of digital and immediate communication. For the measures part of our method, and our hypothesis being there is a positive relationship with people in long-distance relationships who use digital communication frequently and their level of relationship satisfaction. The independent variable is the use of digital communication, and the dependent variable is relationship satisfaction. The operationalization of the independent variable is that of participants studied who are in long-distance relationships were measured to examine how frequently they use digital forms of communication to communicate. The operationalization of the dependent variable is that of participants studied who are in long-distance relationships were measured to examine their relational satisfaction level based on the investment model scale, which Resbolt explained in 1998. We asked participants how many hours per week they communicate with their partner digitally. They answered in a text entry. We then used a 7-point Likert scale and from strongly agree to strongly disagree, and asked 5 questions about the relationship. A couple being, we have a good relationship and my relationship with my partner is very stable. We then asked their degree of happiness on a 10-point scale, whether they felt very unhappy or perfectly happy. When it comes to Cronbach's alpha, it came to equal negative 0.008. The value is negative due to a negative average covariance among the items. This violates reliability model assumptions, making it not reliable.
Our results are as follows. To test the hypothesis that there is a positive relationship between level of communication in a long-distance relationship, which is measured in hours, and overall relational satisfaction, a bivariate correlation analysis was conducted. Now, we are not able to use the traditional Pearson product moment correlation because our skewedness and kurtosis for both of our variables, which are hours per week using digital technology and overall degree of relational happiness, were both greater than 1. Thus, we had to use Spearman's rho. Analysis revealed a positive relationship between high levels of communication, with an average of 32.3 hours per week, and overall relational satisfaction of 7.4 on a Likert scale of 1 to 10. 1 being completely unhappy with their relationship, and 10 being completely satisfied with their relationship. Thus, our hypothesis was supported. After clarifying that our participants met the requirements set by our survey of being in a long-distance relationship, we posed the question, how many hours per week do you spend using digital technology? This included text messaging, video messaging, social media, to communicate with your long-distance partner per week. The minimum answer from participants was 1 hour. The maximum answer from participants was 168 hours, and the average number of hours from our 78 participants was 32.3 hours. Our last measure on the survey posed the question for participants to give an overall happiness rating of their relationship by asking, degree of happiness, everything considered, in your relationship currently, with 1 being very unhappy and 10 being perfectly happy, how would you consider your relationship with your long-distance partner? The minimum rating was a 2 out of 10. The maximum rating was a 10 out of 10, and the average happiness rating from our 78 participants was a 7.4.
The limitations of our study are as follows. The survey was distributed through Facebook. This could potentially throw off our data because people who don't use any sort of social media would not be able to participate in the survey. So, with our subject being the study of long-distance relationship and the usage of digital technology, a positive relationship in our results was already likely. Also, the age of participants was not asked. However, the vast majority of interaction under the survey posting on Facebook were from college-age students, which don't accurately represent the population. The wording under our hypothesis said people, which perhaps should have been switched to college-age students because of the way the survey was distributed. The survey was distributed through the 4 members of our group, so anyone who was not connected to us through Facebook could not participate in the study. This limited the amount of potential participants. We also only had 88 participants, 78 of which gave us valid data, meaning 10 of the participants were not in a long-distance relationship. So 78 of the results were relevant to our study, which does not accurately represent the population. There was a positive relationship in our results, but there was also a huge number of outliers in our data. The range of communicating weekly varied from 1 hour per week to 150 hours per week. This is why we came up with a mean of 32.3 hours per week of digital communication. The results continued to elevate, but the outliers became much more separated. For further investigation of this topic, a widespread survey with participants of varied ages, ethnicities, and lengths of relationships would make for more effective results. The distribution of the survey would also be more effective if it was distributed over both the internet and written by hand. This way, the likelihood of a person being in a long-distance relationship who don't use any form of digital communication at all would be more likely to find than on a social media site, which is a form of digital communication. With the independent variable being measured as a ratio value, it would be more likely to find a person who used no form of digital communication if it's written longhand. In conclusion to the study, people who are in a long-distance relationship have a higher amount of relationship satisfaction based on the amount of digital communication they use. Even though our study had a limited amount of participants, the survey used in our experiment did show a trend of higher relationship satisfaction as a result of more digital communication.